he is also the plaintiffs, one of the individuals who have now brought suit against the Archdiocese of New York. And Joseph and Susan Casa Nellie, the widow of another survivor by a priest of the Archdiocese, joined with Joseph in bringing and filing this case against the Archdiocese and Cardinal Dolan for the maintenance and continuation of a serious hazard called a nuisance. The lawsuit that Joseph has filed with Susan seeks very simply that the Archdiocese of New York and the Archbishop Cardinal here come clean and do what needs to be done to let the community know what he knows. That there are hundreds and hundreds of clerical offenders, priests who have worked in the Archdiocese, who have abused kids and will continue to abuse kids until he and the communities know who the offenders are and get removed by him, and first have to be disclosed by him. So this lawsuit brought by Susan and Joseph this lawsuit simply seeks to ask a court to order them to come clean and invites them to identify all the offenders that Archbishop Cardinal Dolan know have worked in this archdiocese. It focuses on two particular offenders. The first is Monsignor John Paddock. And why is he the focus of this? Because he abused Joseph as a youth while his priest in 2001, 2002. In February of this year, we released a list of offenders we knew had been publicly accused. And we had handled a case in which he had offended another survivor, and we put him on that list. And we released him and his name in this year. And we did that because the Archdiocese had not published a list. So we published this list of 100 offenders called the Anderson list. And we put Monsignor John Paddock on that list because he had been accused publicly of childhood sexual abuse. Archbishop Dolan and the Archdiocese continued Paddock in ministry after we made that publication known. Archbishop Dolan continued Paddock in ministry in the Upper West Side here in Manhattan. Joseph Caramano came forward, and 6 other survivors, now a total of 8 survivors of abuse by Monsignor John Paddock, have come forward. And the Archdiocese continued Paddock in ministry at Notre Dame. The Archbishop continues to make that choice. So Joseph stands with us here today to do what the Cardinal, Archbishop Dolan, and the Archdiocese refused to do: come clean and tell the truth about the hazards. We know that Paddock resigned his ministry last week under public pressure brought by Joseph and the press conference he had done earlier. But that's far from enough, because Paddock is only one of many that we're concerned about. The other focus is on Donald Timon, and he is a priest that has been a priest of the Archdiocese of New York for many years. First received complaints in 2002, and then again complaints in 2017, and claim actually made by his widow because he died by suicide. And after they had made and settled that claim, they continued him in ministry, allowed him to go to California, and gave a letter of good standing to and about him and his fitness to minister. In other words, conceal the hazard. And this lawsuit is designed to unseal and reveal the hazards and the choices that are being made in this Archdiocese of New York, and to compel the Archbishop and the Archdiocese to reveal what we believe to be hundreds of offenders whose identities are yet to be known publicly. The same way the Archdiocese refused to reveal Timone's identity and Paddock's identity until we stood with survivors to do so. And that's why we stand with Joseph and Susan today in gratitude. So, Joseph, you're one of the plaintiffs in this suit that's been brought today in court for nuisance. Tell us why you stand with us and speak to this and bring this suit against the Archdiocese of New York.
Okay, thank you. We were promised transparency. We were promised accountability. We still have not gotten that. I can recall through the experiences of myself and others that we expected certain things to be done that have not been done regarding priests in the Archdiocese, specifically for Monsignor Paddock. We had gone to the Archdiocese, we had gone to law enforcement, and he remained, and probably still would be serving as pastor had he not stepped down recently. So we hope that these names are released, the names that I would like to know, that the other survivors like to know, that we would all like to know. Cardinal Dolan has frequently mentioned that he's losing the trust of the people, and without the trust of the people, he doesn't have much left. Well, one thing that he can do to regain some of that trust is to give us the names, the whereabouts. And I personally wonder if, while I was in high school back in 2001, 2002, was there someone that knew about Monsignor Paddock? Was there someone that knew that he had, done some things to others before me in the 90s? And that's something that bothers me. There are more questions than there are answers. And I hope that through this, that we get some of those answers so that we can move on.
And Joseph, you have brought this suit against the Archdiocese and urging Dolan to come clean with all these names and all this information that he holds secret, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to hold up this quote. And this is from Cardinal Timothy Dolan that he said on April 26, 2019. And there he said, "There is not a single priest or deacon of the Archdiocese of New York against whom there has been a credible and substantiated claim of abuse against a minor currently in ministry." So he's telling the people of the Archdiocese there's not a priest that has been accused credibly of abuse. But you know that we released Paddock's name in February of this year. That made you come forward, right? Step forward. How does it make you feel today knowing that the Cardinal is saying that? At the same time, we now know that we not only released Paddock's name in February as a part of the list, the Anderson list, and went public with that since that time, 7 other survivors, a total of 8, have now reported to law enforcement and to us and to the Archdiocese that they were abused by this priest, Monsignor John Paddock. How does it make you feel, Joseph?
Again, more questions than answers. It's hypocritical to say one thing and to do or not do another. I never expect this kind of behavior from the church that I grew up in, the religious leaders that I have looked up to my whole life. You expect this from Hollywood celebrities, you expect this from politicians, but not from people that are the leaders in your faith. So I hope that putting the past behind us, we can come forward, move forward, and get this information out there, to help us all regain that trust in the church that we were brought up in, and that the next generation is to come forward in as well. They always talk about how the children are the future of the church. The children may not have much to hold on to if they lose that trust, if they lose that guidance, that support from those who have gone before them. So we need this to happen.
And this Paddock saga that we're revealing here today, and the statement made by Cardinal Dolan is a really dangerous lie. It's really a reckless kind of deceit to say that there are no priests who have been accused and are offenders that are in ministry when they know that Paddock is there, and they know that they continue him there, and they know that he continued there in ministry right now as we speak. And we know that they know that there are 8 victims that have come forward. And we know that they've done the same thing with Timone. And you're going to hear about Father Timone and what Cardinal Dolan has chosen to do regarding Father Timone, who is an offender that was reported to them, who they chose to continue in ministry since the first report in 2002. So Mike Reck, tell us more about Father Timone and what we need to know, and why Sue Casa Nellie joined with Joseph Caramano in this suit. Maybe before we do that, we should have Susan's statement read. And Trusha Goff, would you step forward? And Trusha Goff is one of the lawyers working with us. Sue Casa Nellie cannot be here today, although she wanted to be. She's already been semi-public, and she did prepare a statement as to why she joined in this suit here today. And Trusha Goff will read the statement that Susan wrote.
This is Susan's statement. I wish I could be in front of you all today. Better yet, I wish Tim and I were there together. But a health issue made it impossible for me to make this trip. The Archdiocese and Father Donald Timon made it impossible for Tim to be with us since January 8, 2015. Pursuing this lawsuit is without any doubt the right thing to do. Despite Tim trying to tell his story in 2003, and again by writing his book, no one has listened. Today, I hope the Archdiocese gets the message and begins to do the right thing. No more new procedures, just truth and accountability. Tim and I had an incredible love story up until the end. I have been asked if I forgive Father Timon for what he did to my husband. I can't do that while he still has the support of the Catholic Church and the Archdiocese of New York. And the Archdiocese of New York evades its responsibility to hold Father Timon accountable. I pray that the Archdiocese does the right thing.
Thank you, Sue Casa Nellie, for speaking truth and sharing this and joining Joseph in this suit. Mike Reck, tell us why the Timon saga so much mirrors the choices made by this Archdiocese and Cardinal Dolan as it pertains to Paddock and so many others.
My name is Mike Reck. I'm one of the attorneys working on behalf of Sue Casa Nellie Murphy and Joseph Caramano, along with the other survivors of Monsignor Paddock and Father Donald Timon. The Archdiocese handling of Father Timon's case is without a doubt a public safety nightmare. The reality is they could have and should have done the right thing for the last decade and a half on behalf of Tim Murphy. Father Timon's abuse was reported to the Archdiocese, to the authorities, face to face, more than 15 years ago. And this archdiocese chose to not only do nothing, but to actually empower him and allow Father Timon continued access to the public, to children, to those in the parishes, to those in the schools, and to those children that Father Timon took with him to our state parks here in New York, where he abused them on those public lands that were intended for all of us. You know, Tim Murphy passed away, and the Archdiocese did nothing. When they opened the compensation program, the Archdiocese sought out Sue Casa Nellie as the estate, and they settled a claim. They paid that estate money, and in exchange for that money, the Archdiocese stayed hush. They said nothing. Not only did they say nothing, they continued to let that man present a danger, and they affirmatively lied. We need to call this what it is. On behalf of this Archdiocese and their personnel board, who was asked by another diocese on the other side of the country whether Father Timon was fit to minister. And in response, this Archdiocese, this Cardinal, sent a letter, not 15 years ago, not 5 years ago.
Mike, correct. You say that the Archbishop sent a letter regarding Timon that was misleading and deceptive. You're saying that the Archbishop and the Archdiocese lied regarding the fitness of Timon, and you're referring to a letter. We're holding a letter written by the director of the Priest Personnel Board, who works under Archbishop Cardinal Dolan, and this would be with the authority of Cardinal Dolan. This is a letter sent regarding Reverend Donald Timon, correct?
Correct.
And this is a letter sent to a prospective placer of Timon in ministry in Southern California, because Timon is a priest of the Archdiocese, right?
Correct.
And what did the Archbishop represent to those that wanted to put him into public ministry in Southern California in December of 2018?
The Archdiocese and the bishop represented specifically to the Diocese of San Diego, California, that Father Timon had never been accused of any act of sexual abuse or sexual misconduct involving a minor.
So this is after a report was made in 2002, and after they had settled with Susan and paid money because of the abuse of her husband, now deceased, for sexual abuse, that they wrote this letter and this representation.
That is correct, Jeff.
Okay.
We, as advocates on behalf of children and of survivors, cannot reconcile this misrepresentation. There is no greater need than the safety of children, and this represents an affirmative lie by the Archdiocese that endangered children. Sue's lawsuit today was brought after this happened because her need to see her husband's legacy mean more than it has is embodied in this lawsuit. This lawsuit will make children safer. Sue Casa Nellie Murphy, we thank you for doing this. I thank you. Children whose names you will never know will thank you.
One last word. Joseph Caramano, stand up here. We're grateful to stand with you and Sue today, having filed this suit, because all you really want in this is to have the hazard abated or removed, to have the truth revealed, and to have the list of the names and the histories known to the Archbishop, Cardinal, exclusively, and that are currently hidden. Paddock and Timon is only examples. And we have released over 100 names that were publicly accused offenders. but we also know and believe that Archbishop Cardinal Dolan has knowledge of over 300 names as we speak. And so we ask in this lawsuit, the court to intervene and require the disclosure to protect those kids. But we urge Dolan to do it voluntarily because he made, and this archdiocese made an accounting to internal authorities of their knowledge of hundreds of offenders, and they have yet to make that accounting public. And this lawsuit simply seeks transparency and the truth so that kids in this community and in the archdiocese are better protected. So to you, Susan, who can't be with us, and you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Questions?
Thank you.
So Jeff, I'm curious to know what priests we're talking about. Who makes the 300 that you're hoping to reveal? Are these priests who have been convicted or simply accused? Can you explain that?
Yeah, the question is what are we really trying to seek? And when we say that we know and believe there are over 300 priests who have been accused and or credibly accused that are being hidden and held by the archdiocese, we know in our survey of public data, there are over 100 in the archdiocese who have been publicly accused. We know that, and we went public with that in February. We know that the archbishop in April made a list of 126, but he said it was not complete. And we also know that the archdiocese reported to the John Jay College study in 2003 that they had hundreds of names of credibly accused, but they never made that list public. So we are now urging the cardinal to make the names that they hold in their files of the priests that they have deemed to be credibly accused of childhood sexual abuse public, and the histories that they know public about those offenders and the locations of those offenders. Because Timone, as an example, was removed in December of this last year or suspended, but where he is, we don't know, but the archbishop does. And so we simply want them to come clean with the lists that they've already assembled of the priests that they've deemed to be credibly accused of childhood sexual abuse, to reveal that very simply.
But just because they've been accused does not necessarily mean they've been taken out of ministry, as we saw with these two examples.
That's correct.
So is it the policy of the archdiocese to allow these priests to continue to practice in some fashion until and unless a prosecution is effected? Criminal prosecution.
The policies and practices of the Archdiocese of New York have been on our radar since the mid-1980s. And the policies and practices employed by the Archdiocese of New York have been to hide and to conceal offenders, both their identities, their locations, and their histories. And we also know they've hidden behind the statute of limitations so that they could not be held accountable for that concealment. We know the Child Victims Act, effective August 14th, will change that. But we know today this lawsuit is addressing the practice that has been employed in the past and in the present. And the practice is hide the offenders, don't disclose the identities, and do not warn the public or alert them and conceal it. We want them and a court to order them to reveal it, quite simply, to protect kids and this community. So thank you to Susan, thank you to Joseph, and all the survivors who stand up and speak out and share their truth for the safety and benefit of the kids who need it to be known. Thank you so much, man.